All right. Hello, everybody. I'm here with yet another awesome person who many of you are already familiar with, Gary Caton. And I reached out to Gary. This is, I think, going to be the third official video we've done together.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds about right.
mhm. But first of all, Gary's amazing. First of all, he's just a really good person. Um, and an amazing astrologer and has a wealth of knowledge on all kinds of levels, but not only knowledge, it's really also the way that again, I say this, you have such, from my experience of you, total integrity, kindness, and you're a beautiful listener in addition to being a speaker. You just, yeah, it just all flows. It all feels, we have the
Oh,
identical to the same degree moon. So that probably is part of
oh,
the
that's
resonance,
so
but
sweet, Martha. Thank you. Yeah, it's wonderful to be seen like that, and I think it's a testament to you that you're able to do that because, um, yeah, I mean, in my own tribe, sometimes I feel very misunderstood and underappreciated. So,
mm,
so thank you so much for that. That's really beautiful.
mm. I'm actually just recognizing, so we have the exact same degree Virgo moon, and
Mm.
the topic we're here to talk about actually is Mercury, which is pretty cool.
The ruler, yes. And
Yeah,
it's two times the ruler because Mercury is the ruler of the sign, and Mercury is also the planet that's exalted in Virgo.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So
Wow.
there's certain calculations when you do like this is kind of exotic, but it's worth pointing out. There's certain calculations like when you do things called the almutin of the figure and stuff like in Hellenistic astrology. When you have things in Virgo, it's much more likely that Mercury will be the planet in charge of certain things because it has double rulership over Virgo. It has sign rulership and exaltation. So it gets double the points.
Oh, well, I love my
Short,
Mercury.
short way of saying that is that it's like with a Virgo moon. Is your chart a nocturnal chart? Were you born at night?
I was born at sunset, moonrise.
Okay, so after sunset?
Probably not quite. Probably
Okay,
right. Yeah, right as the sun's going down.
okay. So yeah, at night that would be even more pronounced because at night then the moon takes over as the light of the chart and so um yeah, yeah, that idea that Mercury's kind of in charge of your soul on some level because of its heavy connection with Virgo. Yeah,
Beautiful.
like in other words, your guardian angel comes from Mercury.
Amazing. I
Is a
love
way, yeah, yeah, yeah,
that. Well,
and
yeah,
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 yeah.
no.
So, you know, I think that's probably one of the reasons why I've spent so much time trying to honor him and give him his due because as I was just sharing with you, I mean, I feel like in my own, you know, I'm not complaining. I've been very fortunate and I've been, I've done a lot of really cool things. And at the same time, I feel like there's some like misunderstanding or not like it's like people just go, "Oh yeah, that's cool," and then move on. Like I feel like a little bit misunderstood and underappreciated, kind of like I think Mercury is. It's like oh yeah, it's that thing that goes around pretty quick and it goes around once a year and then move on. And the really cool stuff is the outer planets, and it's like, no, man, this
Mhm.
cat is really cool. Um,
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I just want to contextualize for people. Like, so the reason I, again, reached out to you is because exactly this, right? That I was doing research on the astronomy of Mercury both last year, but then I got even more into it this year from my Astrology 101 course that I teach, but also because I'm starting to write a book on the astronomy and soul of planets and bringing in their anyway, all
Mm.
this stuff. So I was going
Cool.
down this deep um journey with Mercury and its science. And I went, what? So many things, right? So many things. Like, I'll just give people the tiny little preview that we were just mentioning before we started recording. That, if you, in case you don't know, because basically nobody seems to know this, it's so important. If you are on Mercury and you are in the time when you're going around the sun, where Mercury gets the closest to the sun that it gets. If you're looking at the sun in the sky, which first of all would be gigantic compared to what it looks like for us, right? Because Mercury is so much closer to the sun. This is what you would see. The sun starts to rise, it stops. It goes backward, and then it goes forward again. Like, what?
The sun goes
Just,
retrograde. Yeah,
yes,
we here on Earth we talk about Mercury retrograde,
yeah,
sun
exactly,
retrograde. What the
exactly.
heck? Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, so just that's like the tiniest but most amazing example. So what Gary and I are really going to be doing in this conversation is like, wait a second. We think, just like Gary was saying, we think of Mercury as like, oh, it's that little tiny little planet over there. It goes around the sun really fast. And we have the Mercury retrogrades, and during the
Communication, messenger, blah
yeah,
blah blah. Let move on, right?
right. And during
No.
the retrograde, don't buy anything, don't
Yeah,
sign any contracts,
right? Yeah,
and at the end, right? But no, no,
yeah.
no, wait a second. Like, let's slow, whoa, there's so much here.
There's so much. Yeah,
So
yeah.
much. So I would love to, I mean, I want to go down too many roads at the all at the same time here. Um, but can we start with um just for your own personal feeling, your own personal relation, relating with this being, which of course is personal to you. And, there are infinite ways we have that the truth would be alive for each of us. So this is not me asking Gary the truth. This is me asking Gary, what is your own
Yeah.
relating with this being, or how do you experience this being? I would love to just start there.
Mm. Wow, it's been such a journey, I mean, I started doing astrology in 1993, and so and and it was because of a dream that I had of Venus. And so for a long time I was like really a super Venus geek, and I was geeking out on Venus and all this stuff that we're going to geek out on Mercury. I was doing that with Venus. And and then I got invited to speak in New York City by a prominent astrologer, and he asked me what I wanted to speak about. Well, I want to speak about Venus, and he was like, "No, no, we got a group of girls coming in, gonna do that. You got to do something else." And I was like, "Uh-oh." And so I knew that Mercury's cycle behaves somewhat similarly to Venus because they're both what are called inferior planets. And that doesn't mean inferior like less than. It means below, actually, in Latin. Inferius means below. So what that means is like in the Ptolemaic system of spheres, they're in a sphere below the sun. And then Mars and Jupiter and Saturn are in spheres that are above the sun. So you have superior planets and inferior planets. Um, Yeah, so it was just kind of a weird synchronicity that okay, I'll do that one. And then that wasn't really the beginning. The other thing is, I had been telling people for a long time, I had been kind of fed up for a long time, like you said, like when Mercury retrograde, don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. And it's like, it's like a nihilistic philosophy of negating. It felt like it was life negating, not life affirming. And I was telling people for a long time, like, I think when Mercury makes that conjunction with the sun in the middle of the retrograde, I think that might be a really special moment, actually.
Exactly. Yes.
And in fact, I put my money where my mouth is, and I began my podcast back in 2008 on such a day intentionally,
Hmm.
because I mean, think about it. People say, "Oh, don't start anything when Mercury's retrograde because you'll just have to do it again." It's like, well, I'm doing a podcast, like that's kind of the idea.
I want to do it again and again
Like,
and again and again.
so okay, like, um, but yeah, so I had already been like questioning, like felt really superficial, and I had been working with these Kazimis, and with the conjunction, and then I got invited to speak, I talked about a few things, and it really made an impact. And I thought, wow, there's something like that's the definition of a synchronicity, and like that it was something that I hadn't planned, but something happened, and something profound came through that opening of a seemingly, random event, opened something, and that opening felt profound. Like that's the absolute definition of synchronicity, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to follow this, and I began to get more and more in touch with it. And I ended up writing a book, and I'm in the midst of writing my second book, you know,
On
and
Mercury or on something
yeah,
different.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's been a really, really fun and interesting journey, and yeah, it just there's no end, honestly. Like, um yeah, I remember when I was writing the first book, you like I said, even back when I did that first lecture in New York City, it felt like something came through, like just from the reactions of people. Like literally, this is a prominent astrologer, and he said to me that I had explained something in his life that happened to him. Nobody else had ever been able to make that make sense, but I had touched on, and I was like, that's powerful. Like I don't like when people tell me that they have insight into their life that they've never had before. And this is an older guy, been around a long time, been an astrologer a long time. I was like, something's powerful is going on here, Um, and so I just, kind of followed that thread, and that I haven't found an end to it yet. And that's been, it's been like 15 years since that was in 2010
Mm,
when he invited me there. So that's, that's the thing that, most of all, I mean, like this superficial thing. And I wanted to just kind of, I just wanted to add like this much depth, and so just so that it wasn't like this completely superficial thing that people just, because what it was like literally you had people who weren't even astrologers. um Martha, it looks like maybe you're, oh no, okay, got it.
I was just,
I wasn't sure if the screen was freezing up.
you know.
Um, you had people like who weren't even astrologers, just like rehashing, regurgitating. The astrology had become so flat and so shallow that even people who weren't astrologers were able to regurgitate it and write columns about it. And I'm like, that's not acceptable. No, and I just wanted to add like just enough to where, you had to know a little bit about what you're actually talking about.
Mm,
And as it turns out, like it just keeps going.
amazing.
And so yeah, it's been a hell of a wild ride, man. But a couple of the things that you were sharing that you found out, a couple of the other things you were sharing that you found out is that Mercury's it's very different than any of the other planets, It's really very different. It's got an extremely elliptical orbit, means it's more like a paperclip than a circle. Venus is really closest to a circle, like really almost, she's the goddess of harmony and beauty. She's like almost like a perfect circle.
Mm.
Mercury's this wacky dude that's like, you know.
And also, like, so like as Mercury gets, this makes sense, in terms of physics, right? As Mercury gets closer to the sun, like it goes faster and then it goes slower and then it goes faster and then it goes slower. It's like
Yeah, man. Yeah.
totally cracks me up.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
that's so that's one thing. So there's and then when you really get into studying, a lot of people will there's something called a synodic cycle in astrology, which is like the like for instance, on my shirt I have the sun conjunct Mercury, right?
Wow, how perfect.
So yeah. So if you look at the interval between these events, on average, it's 116 days. And that means it happens about 3 times a year. But actually, it's only 116 days, 1 out of 3 times. There's another interval that's a lot longer and another interval that's a lot shorter. Because as you say, like he can be going zoom or like zoom, like so the speed. So there's one that's kind of average, there's one that's really fast, and one that's really slow.
And so you're
And
talking
and
about,
so
just to break it down for people, you're saying that that's the length of time it takes for Mercury to go once around the sun.
No,
What you're saying?
it's
Oh, wait.
it's from Earth's point of view, it's the length of time between in the conjunctions with the sun and yeah.
Got it. So the length of time it would take to actually go around the sun would be the same every time?
No, that's not
No,
the
even that's different.
yeah. The
Oh,
but
wow. Okay.
both are different.
Okay.
But because we live on Earth, mostly I'm practicing geocentric astrology,
Got it. Yeah.
and so I'm talking about the intervals between the conjunctions with the sun. And so, you know, that's another thing. Like, okay, how can we even make a blanket statement about Mercury retrograde when there's 3 different ones?
Wow.
See what I'm
Wow.
saying?
Yeah.
Like, there's 3 different ones. There's a quickie,
Yeah.
or a shorty, there's a midi and a longy, and
Mhm.
it's like, meh, if you think you're in the longy and you're in the shorty, yeah, that's probably not going to be the same experience.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, and this is on one level basic for you, but I think for most people listening not. Okay, so even also just the to sit with the when we look on an astrology chart, so much gets washed out, right? Like, so even I'm just even thinking of we look at it, the astrology chart, and we see Mercury conjunct the sun, right? There are these two different kinds of conjunctions between Mercury and the sun. One is what you're talking about when Mercury is retrograde, but it's not going backward. It's not going backward. That it comes between the Earth and the sun, and then it is in the same part of the sky with the sun, so we cannot see it because it's between us and the sun. That's called conjunct the sun, but it's going retrograde from our point of view, and it's between us and the sun. Okay, so that's one version of its conjunction. Then it keeps going. It never went backward. It just keeps going, and it comes to the part around it comes around the sun to the point where we again cannot see it, but not because it's between us and the sun, it's because it's on the other side of the sun, right? And that's also Mercury conjunct the sun, but a totally different world.
totally
So
different.
yeah,
One's
same as
really far away and one's really super close.
exactly. And we talk about the retrograde one, which is the one where it's between us and the sun, as being, the scary time or the weaker time. Like if you in your own natal chart have a Mercury retrograde, the stereotype, which I cannot stand, is maybe you're gonna have learning disabilities, or you're gonna have a hard time thinking, or you're gonna whatever, right? But no, 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 wait a second. Actually, if you have Mercury retrograde in your own chart when you were born, that means Mercury was actually the closest it typically tends to get to Earth. So we were in this magical moment, in my opinion, right? Mercury's coming between the Earth and the sun. And wow, it's right that we might not be able
Yeah,
to see
so
it
there's
visually. Yeah,
yeah, so you're really close to that archetype, right? And like if you
exactly.
think about that for a minute, like that explains a lot of the problems that people have during the retrograde is that they're too close to something. They don't have enough distance to see it objectively. Typically if there's problems begin to occur, it's because we're not seeing the thing clearly, like when you know what I'm saying? And so and typically, when we think about, at least in terms of like rational thinking, it's supposed to be like objective and it's hard to be objective about something you're really close to. It's very
Mm,
difficult. But subjectivity, like being close to someone and losing this objective distance, is like one of the most beautiful things. Like getting to know someone deeply and intimately
wow.
is, and losing your objectivity about them for a while, is that's what we call love.
Mm, mm,
You know
mm.
what I'm saying?
Exactly. Wow.
And so it's like it's like a double-edged sword in a way, but it explains just that proximity that you're talking about kind of explains a lot, you
Mm,
know? And if you think about it even more, like if you think about the the system, right? Our solar system, if you think about this distance that astronomers call, here's an example of the difference between objectivity and subjectivity. Astronomers call the distance between the Earth and the Sun the astronomical unit, right? I call it the inner sanctum, the holy of holies, the inner sanctum of the temple, the only place that we know of where life exists. That's a really big difference. You
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the difference between loving the thing and just observing it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
And so so the fact that Mercury is penetrating that inner sanctum,
Entering it, being,
right? It's like a seed. It's like when you hoe your garden, right? You create a furrow and then
wow.
you put something inside the dirt, and later it sprouts up and becomes a tomato plant. Or I just bought some basil and parsley today at the that I'm going to be planting later. So whatever plant you like, it's that. And so there's this penetration of this inner part of our system. So let's just make a metaphor. Like there's a penetration of our psyche
Mm,
during this time where something is like creating a furrow in our consciousness and planting a seed.
wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so can we actually, this would be beautiful if this feels okay to you. I would love to kind of maybe start here or start wherever you want to start. And could you kind of take us through your perspective of the journey of Mercury around the sun, like what it feels like for you? Like do you do you feel like the Mercury cycle starts at a particular place? I can kind of guess your answer on that, but uh do you have a starting or not? I don't know. Go for it.
Let's see. Let's see. I, hmm. I bet you're going to be right and wrong about your guess.
Well, I don't know.
I'm guessing
Give
your
your
I'm guessing your guess is um
answer.
typically like in ancient astrology, like the cycle of a star or a planet begins at its first appearance in
Mhm,
the east,
mhm.
like sunrise.
In
Sunrise
the
is the beginning of the day. So the first appearance of Mercury in the sky as morning star, that's the beginning of the cycle. Now, at the same time, this conjunction that is, but again, what's the beginning of a plant? Is it that first when that shoot? What's the beginning of a human?
yeah.
Is it when they spank your bottom and you cry out, you take your first breath, or is it when the seed gets fertilized in your
Or is it
mother's
before
womb?
conception or is it
Or
I don't
you know what I'm saying? I mean, so
Mhm,
there's that, but
mhm,
the obvious beginning for a human being is that moment that we take our first breath, and the obvious beginning for a planet or star is when we first see it. you
mm,
know but there's also a less obvious beginning,
mm,
and as you say, maybe even more. um so yeah, so there's this penetration of this inner part of the system, and then as it goes around, then this new there's this new light in the sky, and one of my earliest teachers was this guy named Robert Schmidt. He's a classical Greek scholar who was doing this part of this project called Project Hindsight. And I just happened to be hitchhiking through his town while he was giving these like world acclaimed, lectures of stuff that he had just recently, like this is in the mid 90s, he had just recently like translated from the Greek for the first time. So this astrology stuff, and he's given these, and I just happened to wander into town and somebody brought me over there and introduced me and stuff. But and that's kind of actually that's very mercurial, you know what I'm saying? Like, but um he called this moment that something appears in the sky, the Greeks called it phasis, Phasis, and he translated that word as meaning, in some contexts, it means appearing. So in the most gross sense, it means like literally there's a new appearance in the sky, right? There's this, but it can also mean speaking.
Hmm.
So he translated it as an appearance that speaks.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there's this, and this happens right after the retrograde, right around this direct station. Mercury's appearing in the sky. And
So
what
to break this down for people who are totally new to this, which I think most of us are in a lot of ways. So the Mercury is coming around the sun, and again, it never stops. It's always moving, same direction. But it's coming around that part of the journey it takes around the sun where it goes between the Earth and the sun. Then it has the conjunction where we call it retrograde, because in our sky it looks like it goes backward, but it's not going backward, and it comes precisely between us and the sun. That's called the Sun Mercury conjunction. Then it keeps going. Mercury keeps going, and it comes out of the rays of the sun, and it begins to rise as a morning star. Am I getting all this correct? Okay.
Perfect.
So that's where you are now in this journey. So
Yeah,
keep going.
that's where we are. So there's
Yeah.
this now in the mythology, in particularly in there's a document that we call the Homeric hymn to Hermes. So it's like, whether or not Homer, it's kind of like, was Shakespeare even, we know Shakespeare existed, but who exactly was Shakespeare? We don't know. It's kind of the same thing with Homer. Um, Even more so because Homer's way more ancient than Shakespeare was. So, but there's this poem. The Homeric hymn to Hermes, and in this poem, in the first day of Hermes' life, Mercury is the Roman word for Hermes, by the way. Just um, so in the first day of Mercury's life, what does he do? He steals his brother's cattle and walks them backwards. And in the first day, when Mercury's appearing, he's still he appears in retrograde motion.
Right.
Now, again, difficult, if not impossible, to prove that the Greeks were encoding astronomical knowledge into that, but it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to prove it. I just need to observe it. Like, that's a synchronicity. Like Carl Jung said, it's acausal. There doesn't have to be a causal effect between two things for there to be a profound meaning there.
And I just point out that I think it's, again, hilarious. It totally cracks me up that who's his brother? His brother is Apollo, right? The god of the
The
sun.
sun god, he steals from the sun, and then he sings him a song, and
Mhm.
Apollo is so enchanted by his singing, he says, "Okay, look, you can have the cows. Just I want that thing the lyre that he created
The
again on his first day."
Yeah.
So there's this appearance, and so it's not any kind of any like random, like he's not just this kid who goes shoplifting. It's very purposeful. And he's actually what he's doing, if you read scholars who talk about this, what he's doing is, and before he sort of sings the song to his brother to kind of make up, he actually sacrifices two of the cows, divides the meat up into 12 portions, one for each of the Olympian gods, which, by the way, there's only 12 if you include him.
Himself. It's also totally
So
cracked.
he's dealing himself into the card game. You
Yeah.
see?
The whole
Yeah.
story is so funny. Yes.
So he
Yeah.
deals himself into the card game and ritually. This is ritual magic.
Mhm.
He's ritually and what's the song that he sings to his brother? He sings the song of creation.
Mm, mm, mm.
Sings the song of how the world was created. So he's literally creating a world in which he is one of the gods,
Beautiful.
singing that world into existence. That's
Amazing.
an appearance that speaks. Like, that's an appearance that speaks.
Amazing.
So to call it a trickster is like, again, like that's like people think trickster, oh yeah, you stole something and haha, it's kind of funny, or oh yeah, no, it's not vaudeville. This is way deeper than vaudeville. This is world creating trickster kind of energy. You know what I'm
Beautiful.
saying? I mean, it is vaudeville and
But
yeah,
it's
it's kind of
holy.
funny.
It's sacred.
Yeah, it's sacred. Yeah, exactly. Um and so um that's just the first day.
Ah, yeah. And you left out the part about killing the turtle and the something the
Well,
blah.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he got the turtle and created the lyre upon which he sang the song, and then he trades the lyre for, and this is the really weird part. At some point when they're telling this tale, they refer to him as Argeofontes, which means slayer of Argus. Argus was this hundred-eyed giant who Zeus sends him to get rid of this giant because Hera has put this giant between him and his lover, Zeus's lover. So obviously Hermes has just been born. They're telling the story of the first day of his life, but they're already referring to him as Argiophontes, which is something he obviously has to do later because he only becomes the messenger of the gods after he deals himself in and makes a pact with his brother. So it's kind of like makes you wonder, like, what exactly is going on? How are they already referring to him as Argiophontes? And there's a few different ways to think about that. Like, on the one hand, it's kind of like, they're assuming you know all of the tales of Mercury already in a way. And they're
Mm,
just retelling this particular one and reminding you this is Argiophontes we're talking about. We're talking about the birth of Argiophontes here.
mm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, like there's this, and the Argiofantes is basically like Jack and the Beanstalk, David and Goliath. It's that sort of deal because there's this hundred-eyed giant that's guarding this cow, and he just lulls him to sleep and lops his head off. And it's very much like this, Jack and the Beanstalk character, or like a David and Goliath kind of deal, where he's the last of the Olympian gods that you would think of as this, giant killer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like this guy. So the first thing he does, he steals. Oh, he's this cute little thief, right? No, he's a
Baby.
giant
He's
killer.
literally a baby. And then
Yeah, right? Literally a baby. And that's one of the
newborn.
things that he does when Apollo comes looking. He says, "Who, me?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
I'm in my
Never
cradle.
seen.
What is this craziness you're talking about?"
Yeah. Totally lying to his face. Yeah.
So on the one hand, they're talking about this baby, and then at the same time, they're talking about this baby who is a giant killer. Yeah, literally in the same breath. It's surreal,
Oh,
and that's the thing, like that's another thing. Like mainly people talk about the trickster and the messenger. They don't talk about the giant killer. They
mm.
don't talk about the psychopomp that goes into the underworld.
He's one of the only beings who can come and go from the upper world and have no.
The only.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
yeah,
It's like, wow.
yeah.
And he's totally nonchalant about it. That's my sense, right? It's just like, no problem.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, okay, we're going to the underworld. Come on, let's go. So, so yeah, there's this. So to me, like this first appearance represents the trickster, this babe that's that's singing the song of a new order, of a new way of being, you
And
know?
just I feel like I just even want to pause with that feeling. Like that is so exquisitely beautiful. Like what if so again, here we again we talk about oh Mercury's gone retrograde out and so by this point we're getting to the end of the retrograde time, right? We totally missed the fact. No, 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 it's not just it's not just that we're in the retrograde and we're like in that whatever last week of the retrograde and we're like one more week to go until finally Mercury won't be retrograde again and I can buy
And
my new.
then what? So we can get back to normal,
Exactly. But wait
right?
a minute, like we're missing the whole friggin' point, right? It's
There's
like
this song of a new world being sung, and we're going, oh, yay, we can get back to normal.
in a week from now, or
What
whatever it
the
is. Yeah.
hell?
No, it's like we all need to be
Exactly. That's it. You totally missing the point. Like,
yeah. Yeah,
you
it's like,
know,
what if we all paused for a moment, right? Like, wait a second, this magical being, this is an actual living being, this planet we call Mercury, right? Has now gone from the time it's between us and the sun where we can't see it, and then suddenly it rises as a morning star just before the sunrise, just before, right? It's coming ahead of the sun and it's emerging. And what if we paused and sat with that literal song of creation that it's
yeah,
singing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I can tell you the what if, like
Mm,
if you really sit with that, it'll bring tears to your eyes, man. It's
it
like,
is.
you know what I'm saying? Like I can't, I've been out at sunrise before when like, the birds are singing and I had that feeling of like, oh my God, this could be the first day of, like I could touch that for just a little bit. Let me tell you something, even just a little bit of that is really, it'll bring tears to your eyes. My
It's
God, a
actually
new day is being born, like it's absolutely incredible. But if we're lulling ourselves to sleep with the opiate of getting back to normal, we
ugh,
miss it,
yeah.
you know? We miss that beauty that re that return to origin, that return to, and that's really ultimately, I think, what's going on there. Remember, he's singing the song of the creation, and and there's a philosopher that talks about the ever-present origin, that the song of creation that is always being sung. We just don't remember it, and that's
Mm,
why we feel separate. But there's these special moments where we can reconnect with that song of creation and remember that the world is constantly being created right in front of our eyes, man. You know?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and if we can touch that even just a little bit, the creative power that's available to us to sing our song, to sing whatever song we need into
mm,
being is so much. more available to us than if we're getting back to normal, we're not singing any song except yesterday's song. And
Yeah.
we're singing the song of habit or unconsciousness, really,
We're not listening either.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. No, that's such a great point, man. I mean, um, and and yeah, so you have this you have sort of this trickster figure, and then you have so after that Mercury becomes like the messenger of the gods, and he goes on these various, basically he's sent on these sort of missions. He's like the one of the missions is he's the giant slayer and so on. And then, as you say, there's this journey that he goes on behind the sun.
Mhm.
And it takes a long time, actually. The retrograde is pretty quick because you know why? Because the sun's moving this way through the zodiac and Mercury's moving this way. When you pass somebody going the other way, like it gets pretty quick. But when you try to pass somebody who's going the same way as you, it takes a little bit longer, right?
Yeah. And sorry, can you also touch on what is it? So so Mercury comes between the Earth and the Sun. That's the conjunction. And it's going retrograde during that time. It keeps going for about another whatever it is, week or something, where it still appears retrograde. And then from our perspective, it goes direct, right? It's still a morning star. It's probably getting farther and farther from the sun in from our visual perspective, but it goes direct. What does that feel like, or how do you conceive of that moment or
Yeah, so direct motion is pretty much like within a day or two of when it becomes visible. But what happens is because it's not retrograde anymore, and it's still, so the sun's moving, but Mercury's not, and so that it sort of catapults it up into the sky.
Mm,
Like there's this dramatic separation between the two that becomes possible.
wow.
And then once it starts moving again, eventually, so that if you think about Mercury and the sun being attached like with a rubber band,
Mm,
essentially, and so they stretch apart and then they come back together and they stretch apart and they come back together. This, so as they're coming apart, it's like, yeah, and then, and then, and then,
wow.
there's this acceleration actually. So the weird part about it is that in terms of like the chart, yeah, it's standing perfectly still, but in terms of its relationship with the sun and its position in the sky, it's actually being shot up into the sky.
From our perspective, from the
Yeah,
perspective of
yeah,
not in reality. But yeah.
no,
But yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Mhm.
there's this, and then at some point, once it starts moving again, the rubber band kind of reaches its maximum distance and then it begins to come back towards the sun.
Yeah.
And
And
that's something that's called astronomically, that's called maximum elongation.
mm,
And that happens um, in the middle of the morning sky period. So Mercury is appearing in the sky, it's getting higher, and then it stops, and then it begins to get lower.
yeah.
And so there's this thing that happens where in the beginning, Mercury is like this trickster who's stealing and negotiating his place in the pan, and then you know Zeus says, "Okay, you two go and make up, figure out this deal between the cows and
You and
figure it
Apollo.
out."
You
And
and
then
the sun.
and then after that, he goes, "Okay, all right, so I'll give you this, that, and the other. I'll give you your spot at the table, but now you're gonna serve me." And so
Mm,
there's this, so Mercury is like doing this thing where it's separating from the sun. It's defining, he's defining his own place. Like there's this distance, this separation that's happening. And then all of a sudden that distance reaches its maximum. Okay, I have my functions, I have my sacred wand, caduceus, I have these certain things that have been given to me as my sacred functions. I have an identity as an Olympian god, now I'm going to do what? I'm going to lower myself and submit to being the messenger, and so there's this lowering, and that role sort of fits more like the messenger quality of like, okay, I'm just gonna like whatever, missions Zeus has for me or the other gods, or it's at one point they send him to um you know to judge a contest between the three goddesses, Aphrodite, Hera, and Athena,
Mm.
right? Like who's the most beautiful? And he has
After
to go.
Eris throws the apple. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's yeah. Eris throws and well, you right. That comes first. So
Mm.
the goddess of discord is PO'd because she didn't get invited to some ball or something. So she throws this apple and it says to the fairest. And so they say, to the fairest? Well, who's the fairest? So they say, okay, Hermes, go find somebody to judge. And so Hermes has to go find this shepherd, and he's supposed to, but he's actually a prince. He doesn't know it, but he's actually a prince. This is the story behind, it's what part of the story behind the Iliad, right? This
Mm.
is how, because, um, because Aphrodite wins, the shepherd decides Aphrodite's the most beautiful, and so her deal was, if you choose me, I'll let you be married to the most beautiful woman in the world. That's
Helen.
the sort, the most beautiful in the world woman in the world was already married.
Oh.
They forgot to tell you about that part, buddy.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's how the Trojan War starts, and there's that whole story. But that's just one, so there's like, so it becomes higher in the sky and then it begins to descend. So there's like this two morning star phases, really. There's this one where it's separating and defining a new order of things, and there's this other one where it's like being an agent of a higher power or an agent of this set of 12 Olympians or whatever.
Beautiful. And I also want to just throw in something that, again, for people who are, this is new to, because that's basically probably 99% of us. Okay. Um, is that, and for you, this is going to be incredibly basic, but I think it needs to be stated very clearly. So, because Mercury and Venus are both between the Earth and the Sun, they're the only two planets that from our point of view on Earth, they do not, they cannot be any more than a certain number of degrees from wherever the sun happens to be. So if you have your sun in whatever it is, Pisces, your Venus will absolutely guaranteed to either be in Pisces, Aries, whatever. It's like a certain only,
You
what are the,
can't be more than two signs away from the sun, and Mercury can't be more than one sign away from the
there
sun.
we go. That's perfect. Exactly right. So I just want to make that really clear is that obviously Venus and Mercury both go all the way around the sun. They absolutely do go through the whole journey around the sun. They go through all the signs of the zodiac. But from the point of view of Earth, they do this like Gary is saying, like this rubber
Yeah,
band
yeah,
thing, right? Where
yeah,
yeah, exactly. So from the point of view of Earth, it looks like Mercury and Venus also kind of separate a little from the sun and then go boop, back and then boop, even though what's
yeah,
actually happening is they're really
yeah,
actually going all the way around the sun. But yeah. Um,
yeah.
so yes, keep
Yeah,
going.
so then there's this passage where Mercury is trying to pass the sun, but as you say, on the far side of the sun, like not this really close passage, but this really distant passage. And there's a myth in about this pearl where this king sends his son. I think it's like a Persian king, and he sends his son to Egypt to retrieve this hidden knowledge or this hidden. Um, and the first thing that the young man does is oh wow, I'm in this foreign land. There's all this exotic food and exotic women, he gets like, distracted. And, so then the father has to send a message, hey, don't forget, I gave you a job to do. So he goes to this faraway land and brings back this important knowledge. And that's to me feels similar to what's happening here. Like Mercury's traveling to this faraway land, and there's something, that he's bringing back from that place. There's something, um, and so there's and in the myths, you'll see like Mercury is often given the task of taking care of different babies.
Mm.
Um, Dionysus, for instance, was given to Hermes, and Hermes had to take him and to like this faraway place to hide him, so that because, and again, rightly, wrongly, fairly, or unfairly, Hera is portrayed as jealous and vindictive, and so the baby's in danger. So Hermes has to, go to this faraway place and hide some. So there's this coding, hiding, or retrieving, and or retrieving of this precious thing that needs to be either taken to or brought back from this faraway place.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a whole nother kind of situation going on there. And at this point in time, just in terms of zodiacal speed, it's literally the opposite of the retrograde in that it's traveling super fast through the zodiac, like more than 2 degrees per day. So so it'll spend like this year, Mercury's going to spend, months in the fire signs,
Yeah.
you know, but in the air signs, it's just going to go straight through because it's on the far side of the sun. It's just zooming through there.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's another like whole chapter of this um God that is traveling to faraway places to, and if you think about it, like for instance in the alchemy, they would hide they would code the language in all these like they would make it like, oh, the dragon swallows this, or they would make it like a fantasy novel like you're reading, but they're really actually describing like chemical procedures that you would perform on some, but they describe it in terms of like a fantasy novel to keep it hidden from people who aren't in the know enough to decode the coded language. So there's this coding and decoding of sort of abstract or hidden language that is sort of inherent in the mythos and in the astronomical journey. Um, yeah, it's really, that's another part of that, you know, we don't hear anybody saying, "Oh, Mercury's on the far side of the sun. Don't do this or that," or like it's just like, oh yeah, it's just that part of the journey just gets forgotten. But
Mercury
it's
Cazimi. It's the Mercury Cazimi. That's what I
yeah,
typically.
and that's only even more recently, Martha.
Mhm.
It's like before
Yeah.
that, it was like it's retrograde, run for the hills, and then everything else, yeah.
It- Yeah. Well, and another thing that I'm just curious if this resonates for you or not. And again, this is so different for all of us, right? But when I really drop in and feel like I often do this, I do this in my astrology course as I will help a channel and I help us help people help myself and everybody travel to be with the being, whatever the planet is that we're working with that month. And then there's 1 month in the year where we basically go on the journey of Mercury around the sun as Mercury. Okay. So when
Mm,
I've personally done that, like become Mercury, the being, and gone to the moment of the conjunction with the sun, which is the time when it's, between the earth and the sun, and then gone all the way around and then gone to the other conjunction, which is the one we're talking about now, where where Mercury's on the other side of the sun. What I feel with that, and I actually feel that with any of the superior conjunctions, it's like I get this sense of, if I were Mercury or if I were Venus or whatever, and I'm on the other side of the sun, I can't see Earth, but that's not that big of a deal to me because the Earth is one of infinite beings in this existence, right? But what am like I'm here doing my journey with the sun, and I may or may not be thinking about Earth, but what I am aware of me is the whole cosmos. Like I'm there in my relationship still with everything, you know? And
Yeah.
suddenly maybe that's more alive because if I'm in the conjunction where I'm Mercury and I'm coming around the sun and I come between the earth and the earth is relatively pretty close. So the presence
Yeah,
of
I'm
the earth,
very aware of Earth at
yeah,
that point in
exactly.
time.
The earth
Right.
would be relatively right there, right? And so I'm really in the energetic of the earth and my
Mhm.
relationship with earth versus when I come around to the other side of the sun, maybe that is still present in some sense, but it's maybe faded, but now I'm with the whole cosmos.
Something transcendent, something,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so if you think about it in terms of this idea that we talked about, like a seed,
Mm, mm.
there's a kind of seed happening there where there's maybe this relationship with everything else that you're talking about, I would call transcendent, or, you know, y- y- everything else is literally everything, which is really like oneness. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So there's like this seed of transcendence or oneness that is then, and then of course it comes back around. So it's carrying this seed of transcendence or oneness back, and that's actually the thing that it plants when it passes between. It's
You.
carrying this, that moment that you just described, that's what's being planted when it passes between the sun and the earth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's planting the seeds, and in a way, and think about this, maybe it's taking something from the earth and um
Wow.
bringing it out there as well. It's like there's this alchemy that's happening between, like, it's taking the sort of corporality or corporeality or, embodied, dense um energy of earthiness,
For the
and
water,
it's,
like, so we have so much water on this planet too.
yeah,
Something
and
I don't
it's like zinging that out into the cosmos and being like, hey, check out what these freaky cats are doing. And then at the same, like, wow, they're in bodies and like tripping out on, uh, getting drunk on, what, ayahuasca, and they're trying, they're needing to drink cactus juice to feel, what you guys feel every day,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
and meanwhile, and then, and imagine for instance, so we need psychotropics or meditation, or we need something to kind of get us to that place, and it's a very hard place to get to, that place that you're talking about where Mercury goes, that's like connected with everything.
Mm.
But think about the reverse, like how difficult it must be for them, that it, everything else, to conceive of embodiment. Like,
Mm.
what kind of mushrooms do they gotta be taken to like get on this trip, you know?
Fascinating.
and I mean they talk about that somewhat in, there's this famous line in the movie Troy, which is basically like a Hollywood bastardization of the Iliad. When I
Mhm.
say bastardization, because they don't mention the gods in there, which I think is like, ugh. Hermes is not in the movie, and it's like, come on, man, you can't have, but one line in there stands out where he's like, I'll tell you a secret, the gods are jealous of us because we're alive and we have these moments to like to seize our destiny or to and they're just eternal, they're just always out there in that space that you were talking about, where at the far part of the cycle where they're just it's just like this transcendent, right? And so there's this duality there with these two conjunctions that I think also gets a little bit lost in the shuffle, that there's like this dense embodied energy of the inner conjunction and there's this transcendent unity, and that what if that's like that conversation is what it's all about, like getting a conversation going between those two things. He's the messenger.
And the connector too,
Yeah,
right?
and the connector, yeah.
And kind of helping us recognize that there both is duality, and then but duality ultimately is oneness. Like, sure, there's a difference, but actually it's all the same at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, so yeah, that's really, I love what you're saying there, like that, putting yourself in that place and feeling that. That's a difficult thing to actually, to touch. And so
Mm.
how whatever way that you can touch that is fantastic. And the other thing that I would propose there is that that experience is actually then what's brought back around, and that's the thing that's planted at the other end. Like he's planting the seed of spirit basically in matter, and he's bringing the awareness of matter into spirit. So there's this interplay between spirit and matter that's that's going
Beautiful.
on. Yeah. Yeah.
I have two more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Um, One, and this is a big question, so I understand we're going to give like the 10-second version, and this could be a whole other
Okay.
conversation. But I'm feeling into the reality that again, Mercury and Venus are the two only planets between the Earth and the Sun. So they're the only two that have this distinction of they have two different kinds of conjunctions with the sun. They're the only two that have this, because the other planets we see as opposite the sun, right? When they are when we as the Earth come between us and, let's say, Mars or Jupiter or whatever, that's when we call them retrograde, right? But it's actually that we're coming between them and the sun, and then we call them opposite the sun, not conjunct, because we're between them. Okay, so Mercury and Venus never are opposite the sun in our astrology chart, even though they do become, you could call opposite us from the sun. Okay, but it's still a conjunction. Okay,
Yeah.
anyway, so my question is, Mercury and Venus are the only two planets that have this interior conjunction, right? Where they go
Yeah.
between us and the sun, which is such, it feel like when I feel that, it feels so tender, like you're saying, like they enter this temple space. And so again, this is a humongous topic, but I'm just curious your thoughts, even if you think about Mars or Jupiter, which are the next two planets, or the whole asteroid belt, which is between them. What, I don't know, it's not a simple answer, but how would you compare? Is like those two planets, the Mercury and the Venus, it's like they have this inner temple time between us and the sun. And
Mars
so
does too, actually, Martha, believe it or
Mars
not.
does?
Mars at
Wait,
its closest approach, Mars is now Mar okay, so if you put Earth here
Yeah.
and the sun here, and then you take that same distance and put it over here, Mars can be closer to the Earth than the sun is. So Mars is over here.
Mhm.
It's not in here. It's over here, but it's the distance between Earth and Mars is less than the distance between Earth and Sun in the middle of its retrograde. And
Ooh,
you know what happens? Like oh, the sky turns red because half of California is on fire.
fast.
Literally, that's what happened, and the thing about Mars is that it's also elliptical,
Mhm.
like Mercury, and so not every one of these close, it's called perihelion is the astronomical term, or perigee in terms of Earth, the closest approach to Earth. Not all of those are the same. Some are closer than others.
Yeah.
The one that was like super close, which was some time back, yeah, like literally when Mars reached its closest approach to Earth, half of California, Oregon, and Washington were all on fire and the skies were turning red. You
I
saw
was here.
pictures
I live
like
here.
that, and that was Mars
Mhm.
being super close to the Earth.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So I think I interrupted you though. You were going to
Oh,
ask me.
no, no. Well, no, I mean, you're answering, you're giving part to the answer.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
okay.
that's
So
amazing. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, so I guess so like every planet would be different. Like Mars obviously has that
yeah,
red.
like Jupiter is never going to get anywhere close to that,
Mhm,
and Saturn, they're
mhm,
never going to get that close to Earth. So
mhm.
they are really, they're like generational energies. They're much more, um, but Mars and Venus and Mercury, because they have this super close, and Mars, thankfully, not as much, and not as often, and not as much. Um, and Venus is the one that's the closest. And then there's Mercury and then there's Mars, and so like what is that like? Wow, think about that for a second. What is the deepest experience of being human?
Mm.
Most people would say love. Like, what do people so here's another way of asking the same question, even though it seems like a different question. What do people regret when they're about to die? Do they regret that they didn't, finish their, to-do list, or their, for their career or what? No, they regret that they didn't spend more time with the people they love. And, or so the fact that Venus is the planet that makes the closest approach in that inner temple says
Wow.
something really profound, that she defines a really core part of who we are,
Amazing.
you know? And
Yeah.
also Mercury and also Mars.
Okay.
And those three are very peculiar in that way. But you're right, Venus and Mercury are the only ones that do it in that particularly way where they're literally between the sun and the earth.
And our moon
Well, and the
in
moon's
a different
all,
way.
yeah, yeah,
Our
the
moon
moon's
definitely
moon
obviously.
does that every month.
Yeah, exactly. I was like,
Moon
wait a
does
second,
it
there's
every
also our
month.
moon. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
moon does it every month.
That's the
So
new moon, just for people. Yeah.
yeah, don't forget about Lady
New
Luna.
the
No.
moon. We just had a new moon. Yeah. Amazing. And I'll just point people to the first conversation Gary and I had. I'll link it with this video. Was about the Venus Mars dance with the Earth, that cycle, which was an amazing conversation. I learned a ton. So, yeah,
Yeah.
highly
Yeah,
recommend.
that's another rabbit hole for sure. That's a really interesting, there so as I said, Venus is the closest one, and then you've got Mars and Venus are kind of like the two planets that are on either side of the Earth, you know what I'm saying? And so they're literally like this sort of bookends of like what it is to be human.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and so I pay a lot of attention to the cycles of these three planets, um, precisely because they're the ones that are the closest. And the other thing, that um, that people miss is that there's these really long-term cycles with all three of these planets too. A lot of astrologers don't even realize this. It's literally 79 years, and it's both Mercury and Mars have like a 79-year cycle before they make. So if you look at the Mercury conjunctions with the sun, and it takes, they'll happen this year, they're happening in the fire signs. Next year, they'll happen in the water signs, and then, but for them to happen in the same exact degree, it takes 79 years before that happens, before it comes back around to the exact same degree. And it's the same way. And look, what is 79 years? Pretty close to a human lifetime.
Mm.
And, you know, um, in fact, for men in the developed world, it's pretty much, I think that's right at I think women is a little bit longer in the developed world, the average. Um, so yeah, there's like, and Venus has this cycle of 205 years between conjunctions in the same degree. So
Wow.
it's not just that there's this really intimate, um, sacred sort of foundational energy that they describe, like foundational to what it is to be human. Like Mercury, Venus, and Mars, I think, are at the core of what humanness is. Um, but it's not just that, but there is also a transpersonal dimension to these, where that part of our humanity, we experience it differently over long periods of time. So what it is to be Venusian changes in the outer world, and how we think about that changes over time. And so there's a very sort of universal, love is love, like everybody knows what love feels like, and it doesn't matter, like, you know, and I would argue even animals know.
Of course.
I
We are
mean,
animals, first of all, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Animals have, buddies, and, like they totally, yeah, they have natural affinities. It's kind of like the biggest duh moment, but the fact that you have to say it is kind of like disturbing. But anyway, so there's that, but then there's like these long-term cycles in how we think about and experience that as a collective that also exists. Um, and so yeah, and so right now what's happening is the Mercury cazimi is happening in the fire signs. The way that we think about thinking, or the way that we experience, the coding and decoding part of ourselves, all of that, the mercurial significations, is being informed by fire signs. And what the nature of fire signs is, it's yang, it's active, it's hot. So like doing it, just doing it, like waiting to understand it before you do it, is probably like you're the way to understanding is not in um observing and measuring. It's doing. It's just going out and doing it. That's the way to understanding something. When a fire signs, like doing is way, like, my Mercury's in Aries. When I get something, that comes with instructions, and you're supposed to, the instruct The instructions. Oh, there's instructions. Cool. If I need them, I know they're, and then whoop, I put them down and I take everything. Okay, I've got this, I've got that, and I start putting it together. I've always been that way. I
Mm.
never look at the instructions. I just start putting it together. And then if I get, wait a minute. And the funny part is when you get to the end and there's a couple things left over and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess I didn't need it, and you go back and then, yeah, well, let's make sure we really don't need then you read the instructions. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. It's kind of like, yeah, just dive into it and figure it out along the way. That's a fiery approach to life. And like, for instance, last year I was at this time of year, I was over in Spain doing the Camino Santiago, and it was very much like that. Like, we just dove into it, and every day was an adventure of figuring out how the heck we were going to do it. And it seems like crazy, like, but it always worked out.
Mm.
And it was fine because we were in a time period where that's the sign that Mercury was kind of accentuating. And so it was, we were in, so the spirit of our endeavor was in accord with the spirit of the time,
Mm.
basically. Um, yeah, there's this need to um, kind of forge ahead. The other thing with fire, it seeks, it always, fire, hot air, for instance, hot air balloons, if they go up and they go, so there's this sense of like finding the limit of something, like moving out, finding like what's the most dramatic example of something. And sometimes there's like in humor, for instance, like sometimes the best way to make fun of something is to exaggerate it and show like the ridiculousness of something is only apparent when you blow it out of proportion. Then you go, see, if you keep going, how ridiculous that's going to become. And so there's this, it can serve more, like it can take things to the extreme in a good way. And also like, yeah, you probably don't want to keep going on that particular direction because you can see it gets pretty ridiculous pretty fast, you know? Um, but that's like just the nature of fire. And so, and there, and then there's the fact that this particular one's going to be in Leo, and that Leo house in your horoscope is going to activate a very specific area of life
Mm.
where you can expect, things to become a little bit strange because there's this penetration and there's this introduction of this volatile energy of like, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, like from out there, from like galactic land or, whatever, right? There's this, and it's coming down into like this super dense, you know, embodiment land, right? And it's like matter and antimatter getting put together, and like, you know, it can be like volatile. And so but it can also be very um magical, you know? So
Yeah.
that particular area of your life is one that you could be looking for signs of, like, hey, is there is the song of creation happening here, possibly behind this seeming like, because typically what happens is before something can be reborn, it has to fall apart, you know?
So so I just want to again contextualize this, and yeah, this was actually my last question for you, so this is perfect. That
Okay.
love to make this very concrete for people before we end. That
Mm.
so we're recording this on June 27th, 2025, and we have a Mercury retrograde coming up in Leo, um, not too far from now. So So just for people like in the stereotypical way of talking about Mercury retrograde, what most of us are going to hear is Mercury is entering the retrograde shadow just 2 days from now at 4 degrees, 14 minutes of Leo. It's going to then go retrograde July 17th at 15 degrees of Leo. And it's going to go to direct August 11th, 4 degrees of Leo, and it'll exit that retrograde shadow on August 25th. So, given what we've just talked about, right? I'm curious how you personally would then engage with this Leo, yeah, this Mercury cycle that's kind of in whatever you want to call it. Like it's in flow, but it's also
Yeah.
starting. And,
Yeah,
um,
I mean, look, from point of view of Apollo, um, that story doesn't start out so great, man. Somebody stole my cows, man. What's going on? You
mhm,
know? And so, they like there's this again, before things can be reborn, they have to fall apart.
mhm,
So, and so that's so typically, there might be something where you go, oh crap, like uh, like uh-oh, and it might be tempting to say, okay, like there's a problem, I need to fix it. But it's kind of similar to like, how when, particularly when people sometimes when people are complaining and you try to solve the problem, you're not actually listening. They really just want you to be with them and to feel what they're going through. They may already know how to solve the problem, but they just want somebody to, you know what I'm saying? There's a similar situation going on where, yeah, the like whatever problem, yeah, you're probably going to have to deal with it, but what if you realize, hey, maybe hiding behind this problem is the song of creation is
wow.
being like there's this possibility for rebirth that I'm being invited into.
Wow. So
And
so
so
again,
instead of, yeah,
yeah, just to be again super concrete for people. So it's basically as we enter July 2025, that's the time when the Mercury is coming around the sun and it's starting to enter the space between that sacred temple. Like literally, this is the time coming up right now, right? Mercury is about to enter that sacred temple space between the Earth and the Sun. And it's that time where we go, uh-oh, it's Mercury retrograde coming up. Uh-oh.
yeah,
Right? But maybe this is an invitation for us to really just try this out. Like maybe it's a sacred temple space where maybe things, like Gary's saying, dissolve or whatever, or whatever. I don't know, whatever goes on. We can just observe it even. It may not be anything. I don't know. Right? Maybe it'd be amazing. But in any case, we
that's the other thing. What if something's already going wrong? What would
mm,
be the opposite of that? That it would like get turned, the reversing of something that's, you see that a lot of times, somebody's doing, and then the retrograde comes along and now it's really right. Like that's
huh,
also possible. That's a really good point. Like,
yeah. And you're right.
the
So we
opposite of wrong is right.
right. No, awesome. Or what's wrong? What is wrong? What is right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, so during this July time and actually in the first half of August, we could really maybe collectively, if it feels right for you, we could just be with this time as be aware and deeply listening, deeply present with Mercury, that it's now entering the sacred temple of the space between Earth and Sun. And then it would be probably what if Mercury is going direct on August 11th? When do you think it will rise as a morning star?
Just a couple days before the station.
So like August
Oh, sorry, a couple days before the station. Yeah.
like 9th, August 9th-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
So then around just before, a couple days before Mercury is going to go direct at 4 degrees of Leo is when it's then
There's
emerging.
this appearance that speaks,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Beautiful.
whole thing, and so there might be this. So in alchemical terms, we talk about there's three colors, there's blackening, there's whitening, and there's reddening. So the blackening is when something dissolves or falls apart or there's the problem. things are like there's this volatile energy that Mercury's bringing from this far outer space is now entering, and then whoop up, things got a little weird.
Mm.
Well, yeah, because like he's bringing this really different experience for us to
Wow.
integrate, you know?
Mhm.
And 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 the point is to shake things up a little bit because look, human nature is we like to, you know, keep, things the same,
Yeah.
homeostasis. It's like it on the one hand, it's like really, like it's not just human nature. It's like life needs a certain amount of stability for it to be able to just keep going.
Mm.
But too much of it is like you're not gonna grow.
And
So
it's just
there,
not reality.
yeah, exactly,
Nothing
exactly,
actually ever stays the same.
exactly. So
Mhm.
there's this volatile energy that's going to shake things up a little bit, and it's going to force you to adapt.
Mm.
And that's a good thing because as you figure out how to adapt, you're singing the song of creation.
Oh, wow. Mhm.
You're re-singing, you're recreating your life to make room for this volatile energy that has appeared,
Maybe mhm.
in a particular house, depending on
Mm.
if you want to look at where Leo falls in your house, you can sort of begin to, you can maybe keep an eye out for like, oh, there's something kind of volatile, like, what's going on. Um, it's interesting, for me, I'm an Aquarius rising, so it's my seventh house, and here
Mm.
I am talking about, with a colleague, partnering up doing a video, so it's like it's already showing up for me.
Well, and I can say for me, my Saturn is 11 Leo. So this retrograde will go back and forth over my Saturn 3 times, right? And so I could imagine my Saturn being held even in like energetically in that sacred temple space. And what big thing I'm sitting with is unknown. I normally, this far, so now this is June, the end of June. Normally, I'm shown by my guides and everything what I'm meant to do the next year by now, and I still am not, haven't been shown. So this is fascinating, right? So I'm like, huh, okay, well, yeah, I'm just gonna let it be. Like let it be unknown. I don't know. And what I really feel in that is not even so much that like I'm gonna start singing the song of creation. It's just like what I feel like is I just want to be present and be in the song. Like let the song
Yes.
sing
Let the
with,
song reveal itself to you.
Mhm,
Yeah, absolutely.
mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of the the trick is like recognizing that okay, yeah, something's getting shaken up, but it's not the end of the world usually. Def, most of the time it's not the end of the world. Like I know people are always trying to talk about things as if it's the end of the world these days, but what's funny about that? The world keeps going. It
Mm,
usually keeps going. So, but yeah, so it's not the end of the world, and it might even be like something that can lead to something pretty cool in the end if you allow that possibility. And then as you open up and allow for, okay, let's see what this let's get on board with this crazy volatile trickster guy, see where he's going to take me.
mhm.
There's a moment where there's like this aha there's this like and that's the whitening stage of alchemy where there's like this, oh, I wonder if this has to do with A, B, C, or D. And this is the wild thing about it is, and we talked about this before we started recording, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be going on in Leo next year.
Yes.
So this could have to do with the past. In
Mhm.
other words, usually when we talk about retrograde, we talk about redoing, rethinking, usually like something to do with the past. But it could also be telling you something about the future because there's
Or
a lot
helping
of,
us practice. I feel like helping us practice. What is Leo? Because Leo is gonna be, I mean, long story, very short, maybe a whole another video, right? Is like I think we're going to have this opportunity in the end of 2026 into 2027 to completely redo, really clear and bring into new form how we do Leo, how we do sacred leadership, how we do all of right. So maybe this will bring up some of those themes. Yeah, yeah.
Probably, there's probably so, but this idea of like, I wonder if this has to do with X, Y, or Z, follow that. Like that's your invitation into, okay, now into the song. And
Mm.
and then and then it might be like, oh no, it's not that. Okay, well maybe it's the other X, Y, or Z that I was thinking about. You might have to go, it's not just like perfect linear, like, but there's this sort of intuitive sensing of that there's something more here and like getting a glimpse of it and following that glimpse. And then there's the like, oh wow, okay, I get it. There's something I hadn't been seeing before. Now I can see it. And there's this revelation. It's like, then there's the, okay, how do I live with this new information? Like there's a difference between understanding something differently and walking, talking, and breathing with that understanding. And
Yeah.
that's what we call the libido. That's the reddening. The reddening is like, okay, how do I actually change how I knowing what I know now, you
Mm.
know? So there's like basically three stages of the process of how we deal with this. And again, it's not exactly linear. You might go from, oh, I have this I think I know what's going on, and then no, I'm pretty much things are falling apart. And then okay, I think I know what's going on. Oh, I yeah, I do. And not only that, but like in the same instant that I think I know what's going on, I'm getting invited to do that thing with somebody, and even though I only think I know what's going on, it's a fire sign. It's going to invite you to do it. Like pretty much, oh, you know what's going on? Let's do it. Wait, I need to figure it out. No, we're going to do it now. So it might not be like really, it might be, and then it's like, oh crap. Um, I thought I know what's going on, and then when I try to actually do it, it doesn't work, and now I got to go back into the blackness of not knowing, and it might be back and forth and a little bit chaotic, but those are the three stages sort of qualitatively of like blackening, whitening, and reddening.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and then by the end, we have, yeah, not just a better sense of who we are and of some particular, but yeah, we're going to have a different relationship with Leo and with
Mhm.
that house of our horoscope, and that's going to come in handy next year if you but now imagine, you go, imagine like the old way of thinking about Mercury retrograde. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do the other. And then if you're lucky, the retrograde will go by and
Ah,
nothing changes in your life.
maybe you can
And
sleep
and
through it.
and you got the and you go, "Phew, man, the retrograde miss like then next year comes along and
Mhm.
there's Mars and Jupiter in the South Node and Leo, and you got to deal with that without having this early, sort of
Gift. This is a
re-
gift.
exactly. Like the fact that you did the work here with the archetype of Leo and kind of got a little bit of preview is going to come in really handy next year when there's a whole lot more going on in there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point, you know?
Beautiful. Right now
Yeah.
getting invited into that inner temple of Leo, really.
Sing a different song.
That's right.
Sing the same song in a different way, I guess.
Yeah. And speaking of Mercury, my battery is about to die.
Okay, so it's time to wrap up.
Yeah,
Thank you
but this
so
is
much. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with folks and just I love that you're out there like imagining what it's like to be Mercury on the other side of the sun. I freaking love that. Like, way to
yeah.
go. Like, high five, man. Pal. That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's
Thank
my
you.
Mercury in Pisces.
Right? Just let me feel everything all at once, please.
Yeah, exactly. We can just be anything and everything we are because we're everything. Mercury and
Of
Pisces,
course.
obviously. Yeah.
All right. It's been fun. Thanks again.
Yeah. Well, and so wait, Gary, just real quick before,
Ah,
um, tell us your website. You do reading,
yes.
which is awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the things, but
So dreamastrologer.com is the website, and I have links to like I do a Substack. If you want to read more about, the geeky part of all of this, you can go check out my Substack. I did an article about this idea of Mercury accentuating the fire signs. I did that. It's like in the sort of what do you call it, the archives or whatever on my Substack. Um, I have all the social media things. You can check out my photographs and on Instagram and my Facebook page and all that stuff. And my email is dreamastrologer@yahoo.com. So it's dreamastrologer.com for the website, dreamastrologer@yahoo if you want to talk or if you need a reading or any of that good stuff. And yeah, um, it'd be great to hear from people and there's this conversation that we're having is like there's so much more, and so I really invite people to like um go down the rabbit hole with this and be advised though, it keeps going.
yeah, totally. Well, thank you so,
You're
so, so much,
welcome. Thank you so
Gary.
much. Yeah.
My Virgo moon is very happy.
Yay.
Mercury and Pisces is also very happy.
Yay.
Yeah. And please,
You're
everybody,
welcome.
definitely share with us anything that comes alive for you in the comments. We would love, love, love to hear it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody.
Soon.
Bye.